I've learned to wait on that now. So thank you, Breanna O'Shea, class of 2018, for being here today. We are looking forward to hearing all of your knowledge. I suppose if you could start by just giving us sort of an overview of you as a student. What did you do inside the classroom, outside of the classroom, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sounds good. So I'll give you a little background about my Oneonta self, and then I can dive into how I ended up here today. So in Oneonta, I was there for 4 years. So I joined as a freshman. I would say I was pretty active. So I joined the Terps dance team. I was in a sorority. Later on, I was recruited into the Beta Gamma Sigma, I believe that's what's called, Business Honor Society. I was also in some of the entrepreneurship clubs, and I just really enjoyed being active. So, and then within those groups, I pretty much held e-board positions for all of them. So it was super fun to stay active, and Oneonta has a very special place in my heart. My brother actually goes to school here now, so he's a senior. So O'Shea sounds familiar. You guys may know him. But that's my background in Oneonta, and kind of, you know, how I ended up to where I am today is through one of the programs we had. So I originally joined the workforce through the JP Morgan CADP program, which I'm not sure if I know not everyone's on the call now, but maybe for people who are watching, that was like a pretty popular program back when I was in school. And I know every year we would have a recruiter from JP Morgan come in and basically interview students. And I was one of the students who was able to get a internship through there. So that was a really amazing experience. It was kind of like my first real corporate role. I had worked prior actually in Dublin through an abroad program. So I did work abroad for a summer, but JP Morgan was kind of like my first big adult job. So it was a great learning experience. I really loved it. And by the end of the internship, I was offered a full-time role at JP Morgan within their program. So that was a 2-year program, and basically the fun of it was every 8 months you would rotate, and the beauty of it was that you actually would rotate through different businesses. So within the banking space, there's a lot of different businesses. So there could be like wealth management, which, you know, if you're doing, you know, investing, which I know has been very popular, getting more popular with like Robinhood and everything like that. There's wealth, there's commercial banking, there's corporate investment banking, consumer and business banking, which is, you know, just like our regular student accounts that we have. And I was able to rotate through the different business lines and actually go and have different exposure to different areas. So throughout my rotation, I went through areas like treasury. I did areas like customer experience, communications. So I got a pretty broad brush of work, which is hard to do when you're like, you know, 22 years old. But I absolutely loved it because I had no idea what I wanted to do when I came out of school. So it was the perfect scenario for me. And then at the end of the program, I landed a job in customer experience in the wealth space. Because through the program, I learned that was what I was most passionate about. Everyone's a customer. It's easy to understand, and it's, you know, it's turned into like a very hot topic, upcoming space in the past few years with Amazon and companies like Chewy and Etsy and all that fun stuff. So being in the banking world is definitely a different side of it because people don't think of customer experience when they think of banking. So a lot of the initiatives we have are very new and up and coming. But recently I made the switch. So from JP Morgan, I moved over to M&T. So now I'm actually chief of staff for customer experience, which is cool because we touch every business at M&T. So it's an enterprise-wide organization, and I help our chief customer experience officer, Arthur Morelli, lead it. So that is how I ended up to where I am today.
That's awesome. You started to answer my second question, which is great. But could you maybe dive a little bit deeper into what your current like responsibilities in that role are, like what your maybe day-to-day looks like?
Yeah, definitely. And this is my first time really being in the chief of staff role. It's been very, very interesting. I'm sure if you were to like read articles about anyone who does it, it's kind of like a eye-opening experience, but I do like a lot of everything is what I tell people. I help with communications, I help with PR, I help with events, strategy for the overall organization, how we navigate through the business, how we create stakeholder engagement, and get support really at like the senior level. So every day I have is different. It's never the same. And I do a little bit of everything. And I think like my past experience in all my different roles have very much contributed to me being able to be in a space like this. So our organization is about 100 people and it's growing pretty rapidly. So a lot of what I'm doing right now is about, making sure our team is able to scale, making sure all of our employees are engaged and satisfied, making sure our leadership team is, moving forward and we're making progress. Again, like the banking space is trying to be innovative, but there's a lot of, blockers that may stop us from being an Amazon overnight. So lots of fun things that we've been getting into.
I don't know if any of the students here have questions. I can keep rolling. That's totally fine, but I want to pause just for a moment to see.
I have a question. So you said you worked at JP Morgan and then you made the switch to M&T. So I was kind of wondering what prompted that switch and how your role there differs from your role here.
Yeah, so that's actually a great question and a great story, which all leads back to networking. So I know when I was at Oneonta, like everyone was like networking. It's so important. Could not agree more. I think every year in my career that goes by, like I understand how much more important networking is. But really, so in my second rotation, so I was in a customer experience role in commercial banking while I was in that 2-year program. And a lot of the work I did, and I'll just talk through it a little bit. A lot of the work I did was creating surveys actually like across the world. So we were launching real-time survey feedback for our customers who are being onboarded. So think about like when you open up a bank account, we were doing that for like very large businesses, and basically making sure that their process was flawless and not like unsatisfactory experience. So that was what we were doing. We were launching it in Asia, in Latin America, North America, Europe, you name it, all the continents. But part of while I was on that team, I helped a lot with like our leadership. So one of the people that I indirectly reported to, I created a really strong relationship based on like my work ethic and my responsiveness and just, how I handled myself. And I created a pretty close relationship with a lot of people on that team. So fast forward, I guess it was about like 2 or 3 years later when I was out of the program and kind of in my full-time role, I got a call one day being like, hey, like, how's it going? I'm like, it's good. Haven't talked in a while. She's like, so I'm in this new role. I've joined M&T. Would you have any interest in, coming and joining the team and helping me, scale this business? And I'm like, yeah, definitely. And at first I was like, wow, this is like a pretty big jump from where I was before, but it sounded like an amazing opportunity. With a lot of space to grow. So, and I've always wanted to grow and challenge myself and not just be like comfortable with where I am. So it felt like the right switch at the right time and it just made sense. But yeah, networking is key. So.
Absolutely. Thank you for that tip. Besides the networking tip, what would you say are some experiences that our students can get at Oneonta that will prepare them for their next step?
Yeah, that is a great question. I would say, like, for me, my biggest thing that I learned was how to handle my workload. So I was like pretty active. I was in a lot of clubs, like I said, I was in a sorority, I was on the dance team. I was in honor societies and I was like very active and had roles in all of them. And then on top of that, I was just, I was a student, like a full-time student. So for me, it was like, really, how can I balance this all? How can I stay organized? How can I set myself up for success? And for me, I really think time management was like one of my biggest strengths that like brought me to where I am today, like prioritization, organization, time management. How can I really handle it all and be successful at them, like not let things fall through the cracks and stuff like that. So for me, I feel like that was probably my biggest takeaway, because I was like very, very busy at school, but I think it almost ties in perfectly to what I'm doing now with juggling a lot of balls at the same time. So I would say it ties in perfectly.
Absolutely. Switching gears maybe just a little bit, can you talk about like what's been the most challenging for you for the last couple of years?
Yeah, definitely. And that's a very good question. I would say in the beginning, it was just figuring out what I wanted to do. So when I was in school, I like never thought I would work at a bank. So I had a business and economics degree. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I just knew it was useful, and I knew that like that kind of work came naturally to me. So that's kind of like how I ended up in that space. I applied for the JP Morgan internship, just kind of like, oh, I have nothing to lose, was honestly like my mindset there. Like I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I didn't know if it was really a possibility. But I was like, you know what, like this seems good, and I really should put myself out there. So I did that. It ended up working out. And then I had this like great, experience or opportunity overnight. And I was like, okay, like, is this really what I want to do? Like, is this the space I want to be in? And I was lucky because I got to bop around and try a lot of different roles, but I didn't really know what I wanted. So that was like my number one challenge. And the first role that I was put in, which was treasury management, was challenging for me. Like it tested a lot of my analytical skills. I came into the role and I probably like wasn't as I won't say efficient, because I definitely knew how to use Excel, but like I felt like, wow, I'm like a small fish in a really big tank. So I had to kind of like learn quickly. Excel was like very key. I quickly learned like automation and how to record metrics and analytics and reporting. And I really threw myself into that work, but I was like, am I really happy? It wasn't until I found my second role in customer experience where I was like, oh, like a light bulb went off, and I'm like, okay, it might not be like banking that I'm not interested in. I think it's just like the topic that I'm or the team that I'm on. And customer experience, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm making an impact. I understand the value of my work. And there were just a lot of like really great things where, like I said, light bulbs were going off for me. So that was like my number one challenge. The second one was again kind of like time management. Like when you move into a full-time job compared to like being in college, sometimes that could be a little bit of a transition. So for me, it was like, how can I balance my work, but also balance my personal life and be happy doing that? So work-life balance was really, really huge for me as well.
I will say you're not the first presenter we've had that's hinted at Excel and trying to take yourself to the next level with that. So you're not alone.
Yeah, Excel is definitely like the number one thing. If you have any opportunity, I wish I took more classes that were more Excel focused. And I know there were some that I was in, but at the time I just like didn't understand how important it was. Like even being able to like do a pivot table. Like I know for some that sounds really simple, but very, very helpful.
Good to know. That is good to know. Maybe I can audit one of those classes. What advice around sort of preparing resumes, and I know cover letters are sort of a hot topic right now. Do you not? And just general interview. What sort of what's your top list of advice for those topics?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I've actually been like through the organization, like I said, we're growing pretty rapidly. So I've had like a lot of opportunities to be interviewing pretty actively, and I've actually been like looking at resumes and everything like that. So this is a perfect question. For me, it's like making sure that you are kind of like reviewing your resume before you send it in and making sure it fits the role. Like some tips I always have is, if you have a job description, they're basically telling you word for word what they want from you. So if you could like take some of those words, and like obviously you don't want to, you know, not be truthful or anything like that, but there's a way to kind of like customize your resume for the roles that you're applying to. And there are buzzwords, like whether we like to admit it or not, that we are looking for because of the space we're in. And if you could really just like go through a job description and pull out even some of the bullets that relate to you and then put those in your resume, I mean, that is like very key. People want to see what they're familiar with. And usually when they're looking for roles, they're looking for a pretty specific space. So that would be my first, well, that would be my main one. And then just making sure that everything's updated and makes sense, right? So I'll never forget this. During my first, it was my first JP Morgan interview on campus. I actually did like a tutorial, or I did a pre-interview. I think it was with Professor Shannon, if that sounds right. He helped me and he coached me through that interview process because I was like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. Like, I don't know how this is going to go, but I want to be successful. And he was like, just make sure you can like really talk to everything that's on your resume. Don't put it on there just to put it on, because like someone can point to it and be like, what is this? The one other thing is like an elevator pitch. I don't know if that's like a familiar term, but when I joined the program, we were in a 2-week training process, and they like really made us develop an elevator pitch, which is basically like a 2-minute like quick way for you to describe yourself. So it's like, this is who I am, this is the work I've done, this is why it's valuable, and so on. And it's just a way to like pitch yourself to who you're interviewing. And it makes you come off as like very confident, and it also makes you seem like very organized and like you have your work together. So, and it helps you to just know what you're going to say to start off with. So it's a confidence thing as well. Those would be my two main ones, I guess, for resumes and interviewing.
I'll pause again and give the floor to our students should they have any burning questions.
I have another question. So I was kind of wondering what advice you have when switching jobs, and also like how the work culture differed from different jobs that you've been in.
Yeah, that's a great question. I was definitely nervous when I left JP Morgan. I was like, this is all I know. I loved the team I was on. Like, it wasn't like there were issues. Like I said, I wasn't looking for a job. I just like the right opportunity presented itself at the right time. And the culture change was something that I was really nervous about because I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. For me specifically, it was like super different. So JP Morgan, there's about like 350,000 employees there. At M&T, it's about 18,000, soon to be 23,000 once we merge with People's United. So it's not a small company, but it's a lot smaller than JP Morgan. And right when I joined, I noticed like an instant culture shift. It wasn't necessarily like a negative shift. It was just something I wasn't used to because of like the smaller company and how much closer I was to senior leadership. So I think that also went hand in hand with the role I had. Like, I wasn't used to being in a senior leadership position and being on a team that is like reporting to or has 100 people under them. So for me, there were just a lot of learnings on like, how does that change the way I work? How does that change the way I represent myself, the way I talk? Because now, like when I'm talking, there's people who are listening. So it was definitely a huge change. But I mean, even today, I was just talking with Arthi, our Chief Customer Experience Officer, and I was like, every day I'm still learning, I'm still taking it in. The biggest thing you could do to help yourself is like always be open to feedback. Like, feedback is truly a gift. Even if it's not positive feedback, I always say like critical feedback is the best gifts you could have, because that's how you're going to get better. And I've just always kind of been like a sponge, and I'm constantly absorbing. Like, I never assume that I know it all. So that's kind of the way I've been navigating through my new role, especially coming from a new company. And people at M&T have been there for quite some time. a lot of people will be there for like 20 years. So I'm navigating through people who have been there for like decades compared to me. So it's all about, you know, how you manage your relationships and all that fun stuff. Probably got a little off topic, but still helpful.
I find sometimes the off topic is what's most helpful. So you kind of get into like the nuances of things. To give Stephanie a break, is there something like a piece of advice or maybe a class or something that you wish that someone would have pointed you in the direction of before you graduated?
Yeah, that's super interesting. I say this all the time. I wish I took coding classes, not because I plan to be a coder, but because I think it's like really helpful. I think going back to the resume question, when you see someone has like SQL or Java or anything like that on their resume, it like automatically makes you not more valuable, but it's just like one extra skill that someone next to you doesn't have. I also think it helps a lot, like when I was in the treasury space. So some of the work I did in treasury was closing out the balance sheet every day. So my team was a production team, and basically every day we would make sure that everything ticked and tied to a certain area of the balance sheet. And then those numbers were sent to the Fed every single day to basically be like watched. And we were making sure that for some reason, you know, if there were trades going through or whatever that may be, we weren't missing like $1 million or $2 in the balance sheet, which would happen like all the time. So it was a pretty strict space to be in. I lost track of myself. Remind me I remember. So the coding. So a lot of the work I did there, even though it was like metrics and analytics and stuff like that, it started getting into automation. So just to give you like an idea, I was taking like Excel booklets that were about like 20 tabs long and had like very, very large amounts of data in them. And basically what some of our managers were realizing was there was a lot of overlap within the different organizations. So I was basically tasked with taking all these different files, figuring out like, okay, do these have the same information? If we were to consolidate them, what would this look like? Does it make sense? And even though I was working in Excel, I was also working like with our tech teams as well to create ways to automate things. And there were other programs like Jira. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that, but it's like a process tool. And I was also helping our team build a customized Jira. So a lot of the time, even if you're not in the tech space specifically, you're always working with tech because that's like who's building things on the back end. And it's like really helpful background knowledge to have. So that was my one thing. I wish I took some coding classes while it was like a lower risk thing, rather than trying to figure it out on the spot. But that's my one thing. And the Excel, I know I keep going back to that, but it was pretty huge. I wish I took more Excel classes.
Stephanie, do you have any other questions? It's okay if you don't. I just don't want to dominate.
I do.
Oh, great. Fire away.
So another question I have is, how have your goals changed since graduating and then starting to work now?
That is a very good question. I would say that goes back to like the work-life balance situation. Like at first when I joined, I'm like, I want to be the best at everything that I do. I'm going to volunteer for everything. I'm always going to put myself and make myself available. And that is like how I'm going to be like promoted and, you know, further my career, etc. I think that has changed a lot. Like I realized the importance of like burnout is so real, which is like when you are just working nonstop and not giving yourself a break. It's very real. And I think like creating a balance and making sure you're making time for yourself, like no matter what, is so important. Like it really is. So just like taking care of yourself, making yourself have breaks, even when it doesn't feel like you have time to do that, is like actually how you'll be even more successful. So that would be my number one thing.
sort of have a direct follow-up, and you sort of went there. But what are some other tips for work-life balance besides maybe the obvious taking breaks? And is there anything that you specifically do that's like super helpful?
Yes, some of them I'm just learning. So I was on vacation about a week or two ago, and I just fully muted all of my emails. I'm like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm the kind of person, I have like a very type A personality, if you couldn't tell. I just like want to tackle things as they come along, and I'm like, okay, I just need to finish the next task and the next task and the next task. And then all of a sudden it's like 3:00 and I didn't eat lunch yet. So for me, a few things that I've been doing is like if I'm on vacation, I've actually been muting my email. Sometimes I just like can't help myself. I see something come through and I'm like, oh, I'll just answer this really quick. No, like that's not really disconnecting fully. Other things I've been doing is, and I think you guys have Outlook, but on my calendar, I've been like blocking off time. So my days can get like pretty packed. Like I can easily be in meetings from like 8:30 to 5:30 p.m. like without any breaks. So I've been like kind of monitoring my calendar, and when I see days like that going, I actually block out time for myself. So I'll block out time for me to get lunch or to walk my dog or something throughout the day, just so it's not nonstop and I'm not like forcing myself to go through that. Other things I do is, I mean, and this is like helpful because I'm in a big business, but a lot of what I could do is mobile, right? So I'm also trying to balance like maybe doctor's appointments or just like things that need to get done throughout the day. And I've been allowing myself kind of to take a step away from my computer and do those things. So I do have it on my phone, so it makes me feel better if I'm missing anything, but taking a step away and not sitting in front of a screen for like 10 hours straight is really important, because you don't really realize, but you're not like fully using like the full capacity of your brain when you're not giving yourself breaks. And when you can take a step back, that's usually when you can do the best work. So those are a few tips I've been using for work-life balance, but I'm sure there's more to come as I'm learning and growing. So
I actually have another question. So when you started either one of your jobs, did you find it was okay to make mistakes, or did you always have like a fear of failure type thing?
it's definitely okay to make mistakes. I actually had like a few mentors be like, you're an analyst, like you're the first in the program, like use that, right? Like people want to help you, people want to support you, people want you to learn and grow, and no one expects you to know it all. I mean, even in like the most senior positions I've seen and I've been exposed to, like nobody knows it all. Like you only know what you know. So yes, like there's yes, I would let myself make mistakes. It's not always easy, right? Because I have like that type A personality and I'm like always trying to do my best, but it's definitely okay. And that's like kind of how you learn. Like to some extent, you can only learn by making mistakes sometimes. So, and my sister actually just recently, she actually was a Binghamton alumni, and she just got a job at a hedge fund in HR. And she had some like similar questions too. She's like, I feel like I'm out of my league. I feel like I'm making a lot of mistakes. And she's like, if I was in a different role, I wouldn't be making as many mistakes because I would know more about that. I'm like, no, like no matter what role you end up in, any job you take, like no one expects you to know it all. And like you're going to make mistakes, and that's how you're going to learn. And I think everyone understands that. So that's a really, really great question.
I always like to ask one just fun Oneonta question in these things. What is one food that you miss when you think about Oneonta?
Oh, just one? That's pretty tough. Let me think.
Maybe a short list, you know.
I'll give a short list and I'll try to do it from like most to least, but it really depends on my mood. Obviously, yellow deli. I feel like that's a no-brainer. Like getting the butternut squash soup was like the best thing in the world. I loved Latte Lounge, but I did hear it's under new management. So my buddy Dave is not there anymore, which is pretty sad. Undercover Eggplant is obviously the best, and Depot as well. Those are some of my favorites. But some of my friends, we still come back, only so we try to come back once a year. And then we basically just put together like a food tour of all the places that we want to go. So hopefully that will be soon.
Stephanie or any of the other students have any more questions?
I have another one. So did you go to grad school or thought about it? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
You know, I got this question last year as well, and I don't know if I really gave the answer people wanted. I did not go to grad school. I do not see myself going to grad school in the future. I feel like times are changing a lot. And maybe that's just like the industry I'm in. And if I was in a different space, like I know education's really different. I know dietitians, like you need your master's. But for the space I'm in, I don't think it's like necessary to be in those roles. I think you're able to kind of climb up the ladder and progress your career without a master's. And I think more and more every day, like as we're interviewing, and we're looking for roles, like that's kind of the question that's coming up from recruiters. Like, are you going to make this master's a role like master's required, or is it like preferable? So I'm seeing it every day where it's just like not as needed. I think it's totally valuable, right? Like my sister graduated from Binghamton, did like the 5-year program, and she got her master's within a year. Like I think that's amazing. But I don't think you need it unless, you know, you really want to go into a specific area and you know exactly what you want to do. But in some scenarios, you know, you can be like compensated more if you have your master's, depending on the circumstances. If your business is willing to pay for it, I mean, you should definitely take advantage of that. So there's like so many different scenarios, but I think you could really go either way. That's a good question also.
Breanna, it's Charlene. That's a perfect answer. There's no really right or wrong answer for that. It's personal preference, as you said, but I love the way that you described it for the students that are on the call now and the ones, as Michelle said, will listen to this recording later at their convenience. So thank you for not only all your answers, but I wanted to key in on that one because you answered it perfectly, in my opinion.
Great. I'm glad you agreed. And nice to see you or hear from you.
Yes, it's been just a short while since we've last talked, but we'll be in touch again.
Yes, definitely.
Breanna, since no one has a question at this moment, why don't you tell them a little bit about your summer internship? That's when you and I first became acquainted, when you did your summer internship. So tell them a little bit about that opportunity, because that was a springboard for you, I think. So if you got a second, talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. So for my summer internship, like I said, it was kind of like my first super adult job in corporate America. I was very nervous and I just wanted to like do my best. But basically we were put into this internship program, and what I really loved about it was JP Morgan created like a really strong community for interns. So I didn't necessarily feel like I was in it alone. I felt like I had my Oneonta community because there were about 5 of us who were doing the internship, and like to this day, I'm still so close with everyone who has come out of the program. So like names like Tim Disler, Heather Techman, Melissa Voyer, like I don't know if those sound familiar, but I'm like very, very close with all of them still. So even if they don't still work at JP Morgan, we are friends and we are networking. So Oneonta community. But anyway, I had my Oneonta group of interns, and then JP Morgan kind of put together a group of interns as well, just so we wouldn't feel like, you know, what's going on. This is like a huge company and we're just like small little interns. So We were given projects throughout our summer where we were basically learning on like how to develop our presentation skills, how to develop our communication skills, and how we can like really present to senior management. So the whole summer, as part of like a side project, we were working towards, this huge research project, basically giving a recommendation to the business for one of the problems that were presented to us. And we actually stood in front of like a 15-person panel of senior leaders at the firm, which at that time, that was like incredibly intimidating for me. I would never consider myself to be, at the time, a strong speaker or like a confident speaker. So that was like an amazing experience. But that was like a side project we did. At the same time, I was also in like a treasury space, similar to my first rotational role, where I was learning kind of just like how to do Excel, how to work with PowerPoint. I was creating like standard operating procedures for our team. So like, how can we function and, do our work properly? I was also doing like metrics and reporting. So basically organizing like what my team was doing on paper and reporting it to management. And that's what I spent a lot of my time doing. And at first I was like so intimidated and I didn't really know what to expect. And I'm like, how am I going to even know how to do this role? And it was really just like a learning experience. And they put you with mentors. Like, I think having a mentor in the process is so important. Like having a trusted person that you could reach out to, ask questions to without worrying about, who's gonna, what are they gonna think, or, how is this gonna be perceived? Mentorship, community, and really just honing in on my skills. Those were like the top 3 things that were super important to me during my internship. But it was intimidating because they started off the summer saying that this was a 2-month interview for the full-time position. So no pressure, but at least it worked out. But yeah, I would really emphasize like the Oneonta community was like a huge part of, why I loved JP Morgan and why I probably stayed there for so long. And I know like a lot of us have been working together. I've like helped get a few of my friends jobs at JP Morgan, like Oneonta people who've wanted to like transition into different spaces within the bank. And we're always kind of working together there. So we have a really nice community there.
Thank you.
I myself don't have any other questions, but I do want to give students time to shine if they want it. And
that's okay. If like we don't have to take up the whole time, especially if we covered most topics, that's fine as well. Just let me know.
I have one more question. So I'm going to be graduating this May. So what are some things that, as like, our last semester, we're going to be graduating, what are some things we should be doing right now for life after graduation?
First of all, I would say enjoy it. Like just take in every minute you can because it's like very treasured time. In terms of like preparing, it depends like what your situation is. I don't know if you have like a role you're moving into or if you're going to be starting to look for jobs. But I would say, you're in a pretty good position right now. The market is like super, super hot. I know there's like a lot of open jobs. So for anyone on the call who doesn't have a job yet, that is great news. But for prepping, I would just say 1, enjoy yourself while you can. 2, like, if you know where you're going, like do some research, right? Like maybe get to know like the company culture or, the work that you're going to be doing. Like just do like an internet search. Like the internet's a pretty powerful thing. Whenever I was kind of like, oh, what's going on? I would just quickly search and there's usually an answer. So I would say just like get your background information together, get organized, and just enjoy the time you have. I know senior year is kind of like, for me, it was like really bittersweet. So enjoy the time.
Thank you.
Fantastic. I guess sort of to wrap it up, Brianna, are you open to these students contacting you? And if so, like what would be the best way?
Yeah, definitely. You are more than welcome to contact me. I can put my email in the chat if that's helpful, so everyone has it. And that way you can reach out as well. I've been wanting to work with M&T on my side because we have lots of opportunities, like programs similar to the CADP program, like a management development program. We have internships as well. So I'm really trying to look for how we can kind of create a channel within within Oneonta and M&T and create that, because I know we had it for JP Morgan already, but it would be awesome if we could create it for M&T as well. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out. I'll put my email in the chat.
Thank you.
And Brianna, I just want to say thanks so much for the time, and it was lovely. I'm sorry I had to leave the meeting for a few minutes, so I didn't catch everything that you said, but the stuff that I did hear, that's really one of the things I appreciated the most, is just your honesty about various different things. Like, well, you know, I tried to be all of this, and then you just need to kind of, I just think that's very, very useful. Anyway, I just, want to just say thanks for the time, and staff, awesome questions, really, great stuff. I really thought it was very nice, but so just want to say thanks.
Yes, hi, and thanks for having me. I'm happy that I was able to join. I know, it's a learning experience. I used to do the backpacks to Briefcases too, and it was like a little bit intimidating sometimes. So happy that I could be a friendly face that people feel comfortable asking questions to. So thanks for all the questions, and thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good
Thanks,
afternoon,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.